we'll kind of do a 180 and we'll move into something that I think is very common for both men and women to deal with in family court, and that is dealing with someone with narcissistic, borderline personality disorders. So for our viewers, can you kind of explain from a legal front, from a legal side of things, what that means?
Well, I'm dealing with, I mean, this is sort of the forefront on my mind right now because I'm dealing with Cash's case. I'm in the process of writing closing arguments after a 5-day trial that he had. And there are some attorneys in Illinois that I've seen that have actually advertised their familiarity with these types of personality disorders. And I would recommend anyone, you know, I'm not saying that I'm the biggest expert in the world on this. I have a fairly functional understanding, but I mean, where I'm looking at in Cash's case, really, I mean, you know how in your practice, Mark, you're applying the facts to the law. And for an alienation case, what I'm seeing, because I'm in the process of formulating my argument to the judge right now, is that I'm applying the facts to basically Dr. Richard Gardner's 8 signs of parental alienation. And people who are familiar with Dr. Richard Gardner is that he basically coined the phrase parental alienation back in the 80s, and he's sort of created a lineage of sort of followers, other doctors who have applied to this day his 8 factors. And those are really like the law. I mean, you've seen this, of course, all the time, Mark, where, you know, the 17 best interest factors of the Illinois Marriage and Dissolution of Marriage Act, the 15 factors for decision making. There's always factors. We're always applying the facts to the law, or the facts to factors. And I think what attorneys should possibly be doing more is going in and applying the facts to things like Gardner's 8 signs, which are basically an unexplained, irrational rejection of one parent, and then 7 basically variations of that. But the universal sort of connection to these high conflict divorce cases that I typically do, my cases that I normally take are horrendous. I mean, just a bloodbath. You know, more than likely a massive due process violation, a prolonged separation between a parent and a child, and coming in and basically fighting everybody. But the common element is really the narcissistic borderline personality disorder. And I've done a little bit of research. I've done my best to pick up. I've talked to experts. I've talked to psychologists. And people are often confused about why these two doctrines are patched together, why these two personality disorders are so associated. And the best explanation that I saw was from Dr. Craig Childress, who in 2014 put out basically a blog post that indicated that the commonality is the insecurity of the aligning parent. That the aligning parent really isn't this Greek god gift from the heavens who's the greatest person ever. They actually feel very, very low of themselves. They have deep-seated insecurities that more than likely from their childhood that they've never resolved. And so what happens is that the borderline parent is the one that has an attachment disorder. And for example, like when you're rocking a baby to sleep and you put them in the crib and the baby cries, that's an example of an attachment disorder. The baby wants to be back in the mother's arms or the father's arms. It's that's sort of adultified, where you've got these grown people that have that same sort of symptom where if I'm away from my kids, I'm going to panic. And I'm afraid that my children will never recognize me, or I'm afraid that I'll never see them again. And so I'll do or say anything to keep those children near me, including lying, making up any excuses. I mean, I've seen this, Mark. I mean, you've had women on the stand. I know from anyone in Riverside County should go and look you up, Real Fathers' Rights, neighboring counties too. But you've had women on the stand, and when they're confronted, they remind me of the fembots from Austin Powers. Where Austin Powers takes off his shirt and the fembots can't take it and they melt down. They literally are just And they'll say and do anything. These women will say and do anything, make any excuse. That's borderline personality disorder. That's at its core. The narcissistic element is when they have the same insecurity, but instead of reverting to that sort of clingy attachment, you know, I feel insecure, so I'm never going to let you go, that kind of mentality. The narcissistic personality is when they go and they inflate themselves so high that instead of being clingy, they just look down on everybody else. And they're very arrogant. They're very, very sensitive to criticism. Those people are really easy to trigger on the stand. You get them really mad. Men are the ones that usually, I think, exhibit the narcissistic side. And they're terrible. But that is the common element. And I've dealt with counselors, and they tell me, well, you know, the solution is, if you're a man and you're targeted by this personality, is to ease their fears. You're supposed to go to your ex-wife and say, hey, you're violating my civil rights. You're trying to erase me as a father, but I'm not going to do the same thing to you. That sounds great, except for the fact when you're dealing with family court, because then those statements are going to be used against you. You're going to say all these great positive supporting things about your ex, and your ex is going to turn it around and use it against you. So as long as the courts are broken as they are and don't have the slightest understanding of what's going on, the counterintuitive signals, the fundamental attribution errors of getting the wrong culpable party, all the other signs, these people know nothing. And so it's treacherous, it's dangerous, it's horrible. And if, you know, your attorney needs to be aware of this. They need to understand it clearly. And if they don't, and if they don't have the ability to persuade the judge, you're in big trouble.